Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. Woo! Is all I can say. Whenever I think about the lunations that have been happening lately, the new moons, the full moons, it's almost as if they still are carrying this energy of the eclipse season. And this new moon definitely is going to pack a punch. I think for some of us, it's going to really be felt after the 3rd. Um, the new moon occurs on November 1st, so this Friday here in the United States. Um, but I feel like after the 3rd, once Mars uh, perfects in its opposition to Pluto, we'll be able to understand what moves, what direction that we need to take. So before I hop into this new moon, um, I wanted to say I tried to record this yesterday and then the dog started barking and then I had class and so I couldn't do it. So here I am trying to re-record it. I was about 20 minutes in yesterday and it was just I had to listen that it wasn't time. Um, Something that I do want to announce before I dive into this is yes, okay, birthday birthday special still going on. But what I did do was I opened up some appointments for people to have a discounted rate to see what the energies of this new moon are reflecting in their natal chart. There's something inside of me that felt like it was important that there could be a few of you who wanted to look at this. So that is on my website. You can book that. It's $75. It is a special I'm running, and I'm going to run it for the next week. Um, and you can book for a couple weeks out or whatever. This is a new moon that we're going to feel the effects of it for the next 2 weeks, but we're going to also be working with this energy for the next 6 months. So I'm going to leave open that special for about a week and then I will take it down. But even if it's not your birthday and you're wanting to see what this is reflecting in your own natal chart, you can book that appointment. Anywho, let me jump into this deep dive on this new moon. Um, there's a couple of things that I want to say pertaining to this because I'm going to be talking about how this can be felt on personal levels and on collective levels. And I just want to really emphasize that we are in this time of, I would say, an involutionary process in the collective. I feel like this new moon is really speaking to an involutionary process before evolution can occur. It's like we've all heard about um, doing shadow work or going into the dark or, whatever people say, those terms. I definitely feel like this is a 6-month period with this new moon that is speaking to the underworld, the Plutonian underworld of involution. And involution is where we get to confront what is impeding upon our evolutionary growth. So, a way for us to have an awareness about it. This is really further demonstrated. This isn't just a new moon in Scorpio, but it is ruled by Pluto in Capricorn. And so, in order for this restructuring process to occur, there needs to be a time period of deep inner self-reflection, Capricorn, where we're confronting Scorpio, our inner limitations. And on a collective level, we can really see that this is happening out in the world, that um, whenever I show you this chart, you're going to see that this new moon is falling in the 9th house. There's this restructuring that's wanting to occur where we're dismantling more of these patriarchal, man-made, human-made belief systems that beget violence and uh, the dynamics of exclusion, whether it be to another culture, race, gender, even to the planet itself, to Gaia, and how we have a relationship with this beautiful earth that we live on that nurtures and gives us so much. So there's going to be a lot of things that come up to really highlight the extremes, especially because the nodes are going to shift January 12th. And right now, there's this cumulative process of confronting the structures that aren't working, that are creating extremes. And it truly, fashion, it takes an extreme to counteract an extreme. And oftentimes, even personally, we don't counteract an extreme going on in our life until it's just like super confronted in our face. All of a sudden, there's some dynamic being triggered on an external level where we're having to now absolutely confront in order to move through. And we're reaching the apex of this. And on a global, communal level, on a humanitarian level. And so, really, this new moon is signaling to confronting beliefs in order to align with more natural and timeless values and principles. And I've been talking about this for the last year and a half, but this is like the big shebang before Pluto moves back into Aquarius on November 19th. So the dates that I want you to keep in mind, before I get into this new moon, is the new moon is on November 1st here in the States. On November 3rd, the opposition from Pluto to Mars is happening in perfection, where it's going to even hit that, it's not just the same degree mark, but the same minute. And then I want you to keep in mind that the nodes are going to change on January 12th. Pluto will re-enter Aquarius November 19th. So when the nodes shift into South Node, Virgo, North Node, Pisces, Pluto will be in Aquarius. It's not leaving Aquarius for the next 20 years. And then on the 2nd of January, we have the second Mars-Pluto opposition, but Mars is going to be retrograde in Leo and opposing Pluto in Aquarius. And then on April 29th, we'll have the third and final Mars-Pluto opposition, and it will be Mars in Leo, Pluto in Aquarius, but it will be Mars will be direct then. So these are dynamic oppositions, and right now it's the last opposition that's occurring on the 3rd of November that is in the sign of Cancer and Capricorn. Mars is a 2-year-long cycle to go around the zodiac, and we're at the middle point. That's why there's this, or it's a 2-year cycle with Pluto. But we're at the middle point. That's why there's this opposition. And then we're getting a Mars retrograde to really give us some time to confront things. And this is over this 6-month cycle that this new moon is speaking to. So I wanted to put that out there, and let's really dive into these aspects that are going on. That other thing that I wanted to say is that there's a lot of asteroid energy dealing with the goddesses that is really helping to pull back more layers of what this is speaking to and what we are trying to actualize on personal and collective levels right now. So let me show you your new moon chart. As always, it's the Greenwich chart, so we can read the houses and not just the signs. So we have this new moon in Scorpio and the ninth house being conditioned by Libra. The ruler of this ninth house is Venus in Sag in the 11th. And the ruler of the new moon is Pluto in Capricorn. So I want to also point out that Lilith, the asteroid, is conjunct Venus. So let's first break this down. A new moon in the ninth house in Scorpio is reflecting a 6-month evolutionary cycle of new dynamics on an emotional level where we are confronting Scorpio, the inner psychology and emotional dynamics tethered to that. And it's in the ninth house dealing with our beliefs and where beliefs can perpetuate extremes in our life. That's the Libra on that ninth house cusp. And where, in a natural sense, we are needing to osmose over the next 6 months, Scorpio, the natural laws and authenticity that of ourselves, our unique individuality that perpetuates balance and harmonization on collective levels. It's about confronting these old social structures, religious structures, family structures. Pluto ruling this at 29 degrees Capricorn that have conditioned our beliefs and the need to confront it in order for us to align ourselves with this dynamic of giving, sharing, and inclusion. On a personal level, it's about balancing the our own inner emotional and psychological dynamics through understanding and osmosing our own interpersonal truths, not our beliefs, by getting to the bottom of a belief and then counteracting that with an actual truth. So Venus in Sag is in the 11th house, and it is conditioning the ninth house that this new moon is in. So it's where we are called to objectify our belief systems in order for our harmonization to come through. It's also where we're learning how to listen to what feels authentic to others and having unity and diversity and understanding that each person is unique. It's also Venus and Sag in the 11th house is about transforming our inner relationship to self through aligning ourselves with what is natural and authentic for each one of us. Okay. And Lilith conjunct that Venus on a collective level is this indomitable force that's helping us to do this, that's keeping us going. As we confront or we feel scared or confused, we then get to transform through aligning ourselves with this. Jupiter is in Sagittarius, is in Gemini retrograde, opposing this Venus. It's in the 5th house. So it's helping us, on the one hand, throw off internalized messages and or self-fulfilling prophecies stemming from distorted belief systems or distorted beliefs about ourselves that are impeding upon our inner relationship to self. But it's also expanding our knowledge on the truth. And the truth is only something that can be felt and known through the intuition. It's not through reading things that are other people's opinions. When we're wanting to understand our own personal truth, it means we're not outsourcing an advice or an opinion or an expectation from someone else. It means we're truly going within and doing our own inner work and listening to our own inner voice about what feels authentic and true. And then there's this need to liberate what isn't. That way we can have this 6-month cycle that's helping us to restructure our consciousness. And that is where I'm going to show you and take it a step further here. the ruler of Pluto is Saturn retrograde in Pisces in the second house. It's being conditioned by Neptune and Pisces retrograde as well. But there's a square still going on between Venus and Saturn. Okay? And it's really important for you to understand that there is an opposition still it's going on between Mars and Pluto, and Mars is ruled by this new moon. So I want to say that the dynamics that we are going to be confronting on an inner level are dealing with how we've structured reality because of the beliefs that we have that might not be rooted in our authenticity on a collective level, that are absolutely not rooted in natural law. It's why we're seeing crisis everywhere, and we're going to continue to see crisis through global warming, the destruction of the earth, the ecosystems, and also war and, this side versus this side and the division. It's also this dynamic of Libra. And so there's this confronting around the beliefs dealing with divisions or things that keep us separate instead of unified. Remembering that Jupiter in Gemini is naturally trying to the Libra dynamic. So it's this needing to understand and recover unity and diversity and the ability to expand upon our own inner knowledge through understanding this timeless principle. But Pluto being ruled by Saturn and Pisces in the second house on personal levels is really about reliving certain key dynamics throughout the next 6 months, where we're being confronted with the actual truth of the reality of this situation and how it's affecting our inner relationship to self, and the need to dissolve these dynamics to transcend these limitations. And then when you think about it, Pluto is opposing Mars in this chart. Mars is in the 7th house, so it's this repeating signature of where we're needing to throw off dynamics that we are perpetually continuing through emotional patterns that are just not in alignment with who we are and all the work that we've been doing. Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. This is like trying to end this cycle of emotional patterns that have been brought into our awareness since the year of 2008. I want you to reflect and think back to what it is that you're wanting to culminate, that you've been working on since 2008. I want you to think about the emotional triggers that you're having right now and how they're connected to some type of belief. The way to work with this is, yes, external confrontations typically happen whenever there's an opposition. But if you want to consciously work with this, you want to tap into Saturn and Capricorn in a productive, conscious, natural way, which is through self-reflection and also learning a lesson in being self-contained, to self-reflect, to take a moment, to take a breath when a trigger is happening, and to really make a correct judgment call through gathering the treasure trove of wisdom you have that you've gathered since 2008. And it's being self-determined to heal these dynamics around our emotional patterns stemming from conditioning and our beliefs that are continuously creating division or separation in our life, or where we're needing to maybe say no to someone else as a way to honor our authenticity. And Venus square to Saturn is helping us to really throw off the past, dealing with things that impeded upon our transformation of our inner relationship to self. And Saturn is helping us to dissolve those dynamics through self-reflecting, through doing the Capricornian work, and through also transcending those inner limitations. It's also about getting us into our pure emotion. You know, Uranus is in the fourth house of this chart. It's retrograde. It's ruled by that Venus in the 11th house in Sag. And Uranus is sextile to Neptune, which is Saturn's ruler. So it's about getting into our pure emotion and our inner dynamics to become fully self-reliant. And self-reliant on an emotional level is where one has the ability to be triggered on the external, but to be mature and to be thoughtful and to be responsive and not reactive, to make a correct choice, a correct judgment around how to end an emotional pattern. It's about being one's own inner authority, about being one's own mother and father, and nurturing oneself from the inside out. And Uranus and Taurus retrograde in that fourth house is really helping us to recover this natural principle that we only evolve through our emotional dynamics. We do not evolve through our intellect. If we did, we wouldn't be here. Our mind can work so fast. It's like I can intellectualize the hell out of anything. I can understand why I'm doing something, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually tapping into the emotionality of this. And Uranus and Taurus retrograde in the fourth house of this chart is actually speaking to the way to recover the ability to tap into our pure emotion is through Taurus, our feeling nature. That's also reflected with Saturn and Neptune being in the second house, is as we're confronted, and there are Mars opposite Pluto trigger points to help us to self-reflect, to help us to culminate these long-standing dynamics. It's about, oh my God, what am I feeling, Taurus? What are the senses going on in my body? That way I can end these long-standing emotional patterns of behavior with others, with myself, that are affecting my personal life, affecting my relationships with others. It's where you have to really tap into the senses and understanding that a feeling is different than an emotion. A feeling is like the key that unlocks the emotion. So whenever you're feeling anxious, right, it's really good to use Uranus and Taurus to objectify that sense, that sensory experience within the body, and to ground in and allow through the intuitive function, Venus and Sag ruling that Uranus, to allow that information of what emotional dynamic is coming up that is triggering that physical sensory response. And this helps with that sextile of Neptune to Uranus to tap into the pure emotion. That way one can strengthen their inner relationship to self. How you do that is by understanding your own emotional dynamics. And then with Pluto and Mars in that opposition, it's about throwing off these emotional patterns through being self-reflected and grounded within one's body, within one's own emotional sovereignty. It's helping us to have an emotional maturation process through the confronting of the beliefs as well. And it helps us to understand our authenticity. This is the way that I work, or whenever I feel this in my body, I know that it's connected to my anxiety. Or whenever I'm having this sensory behavior of pattern, maybe I'm eating all the time, or maybe I'm wanting to go out or do this or that to consume my senses. It's to objectify this, to understand the why. New moon in Scorpio, the why. Why am I doing this? And Mercury is in Scorpio as well, and the 10th house of this chart ruled by that Pluto. So there's this lesson in, and it's opposing Uranus in this chart. There's a lesson in opposing and throwing off the old emotional dynamics that we have denied within through not tapping into our sensuality. It's about confronting where we might be denying this principle within ourselves, and that helps us to mature through the self-reflection process that happens when we're Scorpio confronted with it. And it's about not making excuses. There's also to even pull in more of the dynamic of this is really truly helping us recover our nature as an emotional soul, right? That we evolved through our emotional dynamics, and there needs to be a liberation of suppression and repression, which we all carry. I don't care who you are, you carry it. It's in the way that the world is structured right now. There are a lot of things that each one of us individually and collectively deny through repression and suppression. Mercury in the 10th house, and the need to confront that. And it's through getting into the pure emotion, and that's seen with the grand water trine between Mercury, Mars, and Neptune. It's really helping us to pull this in so that way we can throw off old emotional patterns and to be our own authority through confronting these dynamics. It's about osmosing back in what's natural and timeless about us, which is we are emotional. Anything that we, in a distorted Capricornian sense, suppress or repress, it becomes distorted and it perpetuates imbalances. We see it with people in their sexuality and the job and the way that they communicate their emotions, whether they don't communicate emotions. It becomes distorted when we don't honor that soul process of being an emotional entity, right? An emotional, energetic force. And so this new moon is really having us confront this in order for us to get back to our nature, for harmonization to happen. A new moon in Scorpio in the 9th house, our authenticity, confronting that which is not authentic, that has been suppressed, in order for us to harmonize with life, with nature itself, with our own soul, and understanding that with Pluto opposing Mars, it can be the soul's will versus the egoic will, seeing as the new moon is ruling this Mars in Cancer. So it's really about consciously working with the triggers that come up, whether they're an internal trigger or an external trigger. And then really understanding that you're reclaiming something over the next 6 months through this involutionary process of doing this deep underworld shadow work dynamics. The other thing I wanted to point out to you all is this is the grand water trine that I was talking about, by the way, that's going on during this. So just to break this down, the need to confront and oppose emotional dynamics for a new restructuring to occur, Pluto in the first. And the way through is through confronting our thinking and where we have taken in and osmosed learned guilt, learned beliefs, internalized messages that are perpetuating the suppression, the need to liberate from these dynamics, Aquarius, Uranus, through the intuition and objectifying our feelings and our emotional dynamics. And then this helps us to fortify our inner relationship to self through transcending these old limitations. This is a beautiful trine going on in this new moon chart that speaks to this. And the other dynamic I wanted to say is Jupiter is sextile to Chiron. Chiron is ruled by Mars, and Jupiter is ruled by this Mercury that is trining Mars. We need to be looking at our wounds that have affected our emotional dynamics, our sense of inner security and emotional validation, and what has been learned, and confronting that learning. It's Mercury in Scorpio, and it's opposing it's a Mercury is opposing Uranus, and Jupiter is sextile to Chiron. Jupiter is ruled by that Mercury. Jupiter's retrograde. It's in this 5th house as an act of love, one needs to throw off the internalized messages that have impeded upon knowing your unique identity of who you are and your actual nature. On a collective level, we're looking at the need to have discernment and confront beliefs that are perpetuating extremes. And we're seeing it play out through exclusionary propaganda. Jupiter in that fifth house is really speaking to the propaganda that we see and that we're taking in, or that other people are, the misinformation, the need to throw that off and to listen to our intuition. We all know what's right and what's wrong. That is a natural principle. A great example, Jeff Green used to say this. He was like, you don't have to be told it's wrong to put a baby on the highway. You know that. We inherently are connected to natural law. We're inherently connected to nature. We're inherently empathetic. It's whenever we've been suppressing something that we become apathetic, that we become disillusioned because we're not honoring the truth of what's occurring. We're suppressing it. We're making excuses for it. So this is a time where we're confronted with all of these dynamics on a global collective level and then on a personal level, because we're wanting to put to bed a 15-year cycle of having to be confronted with our own internalized structures. I can tell you, I've been reflecting on what was going on in my life since 2008 and how it's like leading up to this moment. And I want to share this with you all because I'm a human. Like I love just sharing. I've got a moon in Libra, and I find value whenever we're all able to be authentic and vulnerable. It makes us not feel alone. And I don't know if my situation is necessarily going to pertain to a lot of you all, but it gives this dynamic of we're wrapping something up through confronting the things that maybe we weren't aware of that started way back in 2008. For me, in 2008, Pluto entered Capricorn and started conjuncting all of my Capricorn stellium that starts at 1 degrees. And I got pregnant at 19. And I had my child whenever I was 20 in 2009. And I was in a really terrible relationship. And I got out of it, and I started to do this inner work of on codependency and masochism and why I was the way I was and how I freaking got into a relationship like that and how I wanted to be a good mother. And ironically enough, I've been a mother and a father to my oldest pretty much. They have a stepdad who's amazing, but for a long time it was just us. And I've had to look at where did this come from? And Capricorn, yeah, it deals with conditioning, with culture and families, society, and religion. But a lot of mine, I could reflect back and I could think about my childhood, and my parents did the best that they could, absolutely. But there were a lot of relational dynamics that I was learning. It was learned, it was conditioned. And it's absolutely not my family's fault that I got into the situation that I got into, because ultimately we choose our parents to be reconditioned so we can move through these types of dynamics. But so much over the last 15 years has come up around these dynamics of boundaries, of having to self-reflect, having to be responsible, having to take accountability for my choices, having to be self-determined to not do what I learned how to do. And if that means I get pushback and I feel alienated for it, that's fine, because I know I'm being a good mom, and I am creating a new structure within the family system, right? So all of these Capricornian things, Mind you, I want you to know this was also a time where I've been recovering who I am. That has nothing to do with who people wanted me to be. All right. So my Capricorn starts in the 8th and ends in the 9th. And Pluto has transited all of this. It's on my last Capricorn planet right now, squaring my moon. So as I reflect, I'm having some triggers come up right now, even me personally, that I'm having to really ground and be self-determined to not react in the way that I once did dealing with this. So this like leads me, the reason why I'm sharing this is you, and this whole cycle started back in 2008 when I got pregnant. Okay, so I want to challenge you guys, especially those with cardinal planets. What has been occurring for you since 2008 that you're really starting to see the culmination of these dynamics, but there might be some external triggers happening? The key with Capricorn and Cancer is to really be self-determined, to not perpetuate old emotional dynamics based off of what has been learned or conditioned. It's about breaking free from those old emotional structures that bind oneself to the habituation of the same thing over and over and over and over again. And so this is about tidying and cleaning this up over the next 6 months through and really getting to the bottom of what are my beliefs that are tethered to my emotional dynamics? What are my ideals? How is this getting in the way of me really knowing who I am? I know that for me personally, I have 2 kids, 8 years apart, both Pluto and Capricorn, diametrically different. But we live in a place where there is an immense amount of religion and also racism and just the belief systems that go along with this. All right. And for me, I have a child. Well, both of my kids are biracial. They're actually triracial, but they're indigenous, black, and white. And one of them is queer, they're non-binary. And so for me, I've really had to break free of these old structures in order to be the parent, like Capricorn Cancer, that creates a safe emotional structure, home for my kids. I have to be a good role model so that I can show them that you can be who you are and other people might not get it, but you're still loved. You're accepted. So this is just like, I'm bringing this up because there can be all different ways that this shows up for different people. This is pertaining to my own evolutionary story. But let me tell you, I am still culminating a lot of these dynamics. I feel an immense amount of pressure right now with that Pluto opposite Mars. So I want you all to really self-reflect on what are the external triggers right now and what have you been working on since 2008? How did you do it in 2008 and how would you do it different now? Think about the mountain goat. It it doesn't really understand how far it's climbed until it looks back down and sees, oh my God, I'm all the way up here, right? Yeah, I've still got more to go, but man, I've made a lot of headway here. I want you to reflect and think about how far you've come. And then I want you to really allow yourself to feel compassion and empathy for the journey that you've been on because it can help you get into the pure emotion. Maybe you'll cry, maybe you'll release tears, maybe you'll see, man, I'm still feeling guilt or shame or judgment towards myself about certain things. And there's this need with Saturn and Pisces and Neptune there, especially with Neptune being a part of the Earth trine, I mean the water trine going on, the grand water trine, and Neptune sextiling Uranus and Uranus sextiling um, Mars, which is opposing that Pluto, to really allow yourself to feel and to have gratitude for all that you've been doing and how you've been recovering yourself. emotional, physical, spiritual um, journey that you've been on, and allow it to flow. Give yourself compassion and love and grace, and release the judgment or the guilt for not doing what you would have wanted to do if you look back on the past, and really understanding how far you've come, because we don't want to get stuck in like stinking thinking where it becomes repressive, like, oh, I'm going to avoid now. I'm going to avoid this dynamic because it feels so painful. I would have done something completely different then if I knew what I knew now. It's all part of the journey, and this chart is really reflecting that, and it's wanting us to honor the truth of this evolutionary process, and to still continue to confront, because there's still more work that needs to be done. I want to make sure that I want to hit a couple of things. After November 3rd, if you are feeling dynamic tension, and especially with this new moon, after the 3rd, a lot more clarity and a lot of clarity can come for you to know what action Mars to take in order to continue this healing process. Remember that Mars is ruling Chiron. The other thing that I want to speak to is, let me share this with you. Kassandra is conjunct Pluto, and it is also opposing Mars. This is really a big indicator. Kassandra always pulls in Venus, and it always pulls in Mercury. There's a really big indicator, I talked about this earlier this week, that there could be a need for one to not suppress their voice, and to confront structures and have a conversation where you're sincere and rooted in your authenticity. Maybe for a long time you've been suppressing your voice and not saying what it is that you need to say out of fear of someone going away or not being there anymore. But here's the dynamic when we're dealing with cardinal energy, especially pulling in Libra, is, and I want to point this out before I really get into that, Sophrosyne is also square the nodes, okay? With that resolution being that south node, Sophrosyne always pulls in Venus as well, but it pulls in Neptune. This is dynamic for two reasons. One is that there could be some who are needing to have conversations. But the dynamic with pulling in Libra energy into the cardinal cross is that it really gives us necessary feedback when we use our voice, our personal voice of authority, and we're coming from a sincere and authentic place. We're expressing our emotions, how something made us feel. Sometimes people are going to deny that happening. They're not going to want you. They don't want to reflect on the past. They don't want to reflect on how something could have affected you. It could be too painful. It could be bringing up judgment or shame for them. Or on the flip side, it could be you participating in that way. But the key is if you're going to say something, I've talked about this. There's a lesson in Libra. If someone doesn't have an ability to hear you, if they're denying listening to you, if they're blocking that, or on the flip side, they allow it, but they still can't hear you, that feedback, their actions actually are revealing to you a choice that you can make, how you move forward. Are you going to abandon yourself? Are you going to honor where someone's at? Do you need to make a choice around, can I move forward if this person is avoiding a conversation or doesn't have the ability to hear me? There's a lot of choices that can come up, and it's just really imperative to know, as long as you have a sincere intention and you respond and not react to the feedback or their actions pertaining to what you need to say, this is really where the growth can come in, where we don't abandon ourselves, where we choose to not acquiesce because someone doesn't want to deal with it. We can honor it, but we know we can move in a different path now. So there can be a lot coming up around emotional dynamics where conversations are needed to be had, where someone needs to have that conversation as an act of listening to themselves and honoring themselves. Kassandra is ruled by Saturn in Pisces retrograde. This could be where it dissolves an old dynamic, an old structure within the relationship, somehow, some way, by the feedback you get. Either someone is willing to go and to move with, or maybe they're wanting to avoid. And then you have to make a choice, and that can be where maybe you're not going to enable a behavior anymore. Remembering that like Pisces correlates with a supreme form of giving. It's where one can say, I'm not going to participate in your non-growth situation. I'm not wanting to be in a non-growth situation. And so it can be appearing to not give because you just don't want to enable, because enabling perpetuates an inability to growth. So that could be coming up for a lot of people. These could be the emotional patterns where one is needing to talk or express it. The other dynamic I wanted to speak to is Sophrosyne is squaring the nodal axis. And I did a video over this. It's on the EA Zoom and it's on my YouTube channel. I did it last week. But this is where it really pulls in Venus and Neptune when you're working with Sophrosyne. The resolution node is the South Node in Libra. So it's about having temperance and discernment around our relational dynamics or the extremes that have played out in our lives pertaining to our beliefs, and the need to have temperance around self-reflecting on these Sophrosynes in Capricorn as a way to objectify those beliefs, transform our inner relationship to self in an authentic way, to recover that authenticity and to transcend those inner limitations that help to fortify our inner relationships. So there's a lot around discernment coming up for people on having soul test of the old dynamics that you've seen that have perpetuated extremes. There can be tests right now where you're reliving or re-experiencing it, not because you haven't grown, but it's because the soul is like, I want to strengthen and I want to be self-determined to not be who I once was. So this is going to come up as a way to make sure that I'm opposing or throwing off this old pattern. Hence Pluto opposing Mars as well. And I wanted to make sure that I'm hitting everything. I am. I just want us to remember that this week, especially this new moon, it can be a catalyst for that Mars-Pluto opposition, where we're confronted, where we have a choice to do something different than we did, to integrate new emotional patterns as a way to be one's own authority while throwing off the others. And that's where it takes a really conscious effort to be self-determined, to reflect on, how do I want to respond to this? How do I want to make this impact? And it really has the ability to mirror to other people when you do this work, that you're not alone and that you can be a natural role model. The restructuring that's wanting to occur is a restructuring within the collective conscious to more natural and matriarchal principles. Hence, Mars, the desires on a collective level to get back into matriarchal natural law through the moon and the ninth house, confronting old beliefs that have perpetuated extremes on a global level that are distortions of natural law, ninth house, and the need to liberate from those dynamics, and a need to integrate new structures that are in alignment with matriarchal natural law. Matriarchal law is really just honoring that we are emotional beings that are aligned with natural, universal, timeless principles, okay? So you really see that reflected in that chart. And you see it reflected the extremes that have perpetuated from the suppression of this dynamic. So I wanted to I've talked about like the dynamics that can come up, how you can work with it on a personal, emotional level. But if you're someone who likes to do ritual, this new moon would be amazing to sit out in nature. It would be amazing. Scorpio likes to detoxify. It would be great. A lot of us, I'm going to say Pluto and Capricorn is dealing with cortisol, the stress hormone. It would be a great time to detox cortisol from your body, the stress hormone. It's a 28-day detox. It's a whole lunar cycle. And you can look up, you know, foods that are great for balancing cortisol and detoxifying it. And I think that I know that this is what I'm going to do on the new moon. I'm going to do this detoxification of cortisol in my body. I it, it will end on the next new moon. It'll be a whole 28-day cycle of detox for me, of purging. Um, of clearing out my system, of using magnesium to help calm and bring balance. I'm gonna, I mean, I can tell you what I'm gonna do tomorrow. I'm going to sit out by my chimenea and I'm gonna write down my intentions and I'm gonna journal about my limiting beliefs and I'm gonna write a list of the things that are actually true as a way to fortify my inner relationship, as a way to detoxify old beliefs that are limiting. I'm gonna be objectifying where self-fulfilling prophecies have perpetuated in my life um, and it's about taking accountability and responsibility for my own personal growth and really consciously working with this new moon to have a big detoxification. Um, I think it would be a great time for that. I also think with Mercury and Scorpio in the 10th house of this chart, it would be great sitting out in nature and reflecting on um, and confronting oneself through self-reflecting. Um, what have I denied? What emotions have I denied? Where have I made excuses to not do the things that I need to do? Um, and how do I want that to change, to transform, right? That's pulling in Mercury opposing that Uranus. How do I want my inner emotional reality to change? What needs to change? So it's really looking at the chart and utilizing this, writing it down. Mercury's great for writing it down. All of the Sag energy is great for being in nature, observing nature, watching nature, to remember natural law. Um, and of course, sitting by a fire is just like, I mean, I love it. The one thing I did forget about you guys is Juno is at 29 degrees Libra, and it is square in a T square to Mars and Pluto. I want to give a heads up and segue off of this whole video that I just talked about that there could be karmic contracts with our relationships that if it is not rooted in our authenticity and it is against our nature and our values, that they are ending. And it can be the trigger point for us to understand the emotional patterns that perpetuated living like that or being in those type of karmic contracts that are even from prior lifetimes. So I want you to remember that because there could be some endings with relationships, and that can be any type of relationship. It can also be where through doing this work, one can start new relational patterns within that karmic relationship that promotes balance and harmony through just being authentic and authentic listening, being vulnerable, being intimate, So I wanted to throw that out there. All right, this is your new moon. I will see you all next week. I look forward to seeing if some of you want to do a new moon special. And I will see you all soon. Happy new moon. Work with this. It's a very powerful new moon to reconnect with your actual soul nature. Scorpio in the ninth house for rebalancing to occur. Libra on that ninth house cusp. Happy new moon.